Hello everyone, and welcome back. I'm glad you could stop by tonight here at Bigfoot Lake, as tonight I'm going to talk about something just a little bit different. Had some things sent to me just the other day, and it was actually encounters that occurred in the state of Pennsylvania. And what made these encounters unique was that these encounters were with Bigfoot that were white in color. Have you ever heard of a white-haired Bigfoot? Let me know if you've ever heard of such a thing. But when I got those reports emailed to me, it kind of triggered my mind a little bit that this isn't the first time I've found reports of these. I found multiple reports of white Bigfoots. At some point in time we will talk about those Pennsylvania incidents, but I thought tonight we could talk about a few of these encounters that are unique in the fact that the Bigfoot have white hair. The first one is a fairly short encounter from Louisiana, and the second one is not much longer, and it's from Mississippi. And the last encounter I really hope you can stick around for, because quite frankly I don't really know how to describe the last encounter other than it's a beautiful encounter. It's beautiful. There's a sadness to it. There's a gentleness to it. So that one is from the state of Missouri. So I hope you can stick around for the third encounter. So with that being said, pull up a stump and sit back as we dive into these three encounters with white Bigfoot. So the first encounter begins in Terrebonne Parish, and that's in Houma, Louisiana. I live in Houma, Louisiana, and one night about 9 years ago, my cousin and I were returning home through an old back bayou road that runs between Duloc and Chavin. Anyway, it was around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning when all of a sudden this huge white, yes, white, Bigfoot came across the road in front of us. It was about no more than 50 feet in front of the truck. We weren't going that fast because of the road. This white Bigfoot took 2 big steps across the road. His or her first step was almost in the middle of the road. I mean, this thing was big, around 7 to 7.5 feet tall, and at least 300 pounds. Man, we didn't know what to think. As soon as we saw it, we stopped the truck and got out. My cousin grabbed his spotlight we used for night fishing, the big kind. We plugged it in and pointed it where the thing went through the brush and the trees. This thing moved fast. It only took maybe a minute or less to get the light out and point the light, and saw right where it went through the bushes and the small trees had been pushed right over like they were nothing. It was an awesome night, but it scared the crap out of us. On the way home, we didn't say a word. This is actually the first time I've spoken of it since. It's all true, but unfortunately, I've never seen anything like it again. I have always heard strange noises here in the night. I feel as big and vast as the swamps are here that there might be plenty of things out there we may never see or study ever, keeping my eyes open. So that's our first encounter from the state of Louisiana. And if you've ever visited the state of Louisiana, it's absolutely beautiful. But the one thing that really jumped out at me during my time in Louisiana is the sheer volume of swamps. so much swampland in the state of Louisiana. Many of the highways that you drive on, they're just elevated highways that drive through swampland. You look out to the left, you look out to the right, and it's swamp as far as you can see. It's beautiful, and there's something about it. There's so much unknown there. It almost creates a mystery in itself. So what do you guys think? This Louisiana white Bigfoot encounter. Have you ever heard anything like this? Let me know what you think of this first encounter. Yeah, leave me a comment. And with that said, we'll move on to our second encounter of the evening. And this encounter comes from Columbus, Mississippi. And before we get too far, I want to see if you guys have heard this term before. Bigfoot goes by a lot of different aliases, I guess. Different regions of I guess across the world, they have their own terms for Bigfoot. But have you ever heard of the Booger bear? The Booger bear. That's what they describe this creature as in this Columbus, Mississippi encounter. And that's actually not too far from our last encounter in Louisiana. So with that being said, let's begin our second encounter of a white-haired Bigfoot in Columbus, Mississippi. I haven't told anyone outside of my friends about my experience, although there were plenty of others around at the time. This encounter happened about 30 years ago in Columbus, Mississippi. I and several of the neighborhood kids were out playing in my front yard. I was the oldest, so the rest of the dozen or so kids were 4th grade and earlier in school. All of us were playing tag, and to make things level out for the younger kids, we were all turning around and around to get dizzy, so the young ones could have a fighting chance of catching us. All of a sudden, my youngest brother ran through the group yelling, "Booger bear!" He looked totally scared to death. I thought he was joking, but then my next brother did the same while pointing toward the unoccupied side of our duplex apartment house. Soon I looked around to find that I was the only one left standing there in my front yard. The rest of the kids had run to where the parents were outside chatting next door. All of them were holding on to his or her parent. Well, I looked down the street and saw nothing unusual, and I looked again, both ways, same result. As I was turning back toward them, my eye caught a movement beside my duplex. Something was standing at the corner, hugging the corner as if though to peek around it. It appeared to be slightly hunched over, and yet the top of its head was at the top of the window. The top of that window was at about the 7-foot plus level. Could have been higher. One day I might get a chance to measure it because the house is still there today, although the neighborhood is not where I would care to be at any time nowadays. Anyway, I stood there looking, trying to figure out what this white, hairy thing was. Earlier in the year, maybe a couple of months, been a long time ago, there was a report of a white gorilla that had escaped from a circus. Thing is, kids know when a circus is around in those days, and I had never heard of one being anywhere near. This thing was just standing there, slightly moving, kind of side to side. Since it was dusk and I couldn't really tell what this thing was that I was looking at, I slowly backed over to the grown-ups area. Eventually, the thing was hidden from my view by the house. I eventually worked up enough courage to make a wide arc towards where I saw it to see if it was still there. Nope, it was gone. I had a terrible time sleeping that night and didn't want to be anywhere near a window, even though we had no AC and it was warm weather. Next morning I went to the area just to see if I could find anything. Nothing. I was never late for supper again, and never stayed out after dark, etc. This experience is real, and I have questioned my brothers about it, but they remember nothing. This is my only Bigfoot report. So what do you guys think of that one? This group of kids just playing tag in Columbus, Mississippi, and they see something that they're calling the Booger bear. Multiple kids saw it. White hair. So it matches that first encounter in Louisiana with the white hair. So maybe there's something to this. A white Bigfoot. What do you guys think? Think it could be something genetic, or possibly, I know there's reports of the Yeti, but I'm not so sure that is a North American thing. But I'd like to get you guys' thoughts on that. So now we move to our last encounter of the night, and like I mentioned earlier, this encounter is it's quite amazing, and you hear so many encounters where there's a fear associated with it, and there's sometimes even terror associated with these encounters, where the Bigfoot is aggressive, or possibly throwing rocks, or making loud vocalizations trying to scare someone away, or perhaps protect young. This one is different. This one is very different. I can only describe this as, this is a beautiful encounter. So I hope you enjoy this. I really like this encounter. It's one of my favorites that I've come across. So this is from Franklin County, Missouri, and this was July or August of 2004, and this was approximately 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Where do I start? Well, first of all, I was visiting my parents' home, which is a trailer in Londell, Missouri. I lived in Warrensburg, Missouri at the time, so it was about a 4-hour drive to get there. Because of the drive, I would stay for at least a week each time I came to visit. I brought my 4-year-old son each time as well. It was probably about 2 to 3 p.m., but I only think this because there was full sun, and my mother, who is disabled, was napping, and that is usually the time she would lay down. My son, their dog Buddy, and I were all sitting on the back deck of the trailer, although we refer to it as the front porch because the driveway is on that side of the house, and that door was the only one we used to enter and exit the trailer. So the 3 of us were sitting there just chatting, and something caught my attention directly ahead of me and a little ways off in the distance. I remember thinking it was a person as it was walking, but as it drew closer, I could see long white hair covering it. I had an instant instinct to get my son in the trailer, so I hurried him inside and I followed. I closed the screen door and continued to watch this thing up the slight hill and towards the trailer. I felt horrible for Buddy, who was only an outside dog, because I had left him out there and he was very scared. He had hopped down from his chair and he got under it. Buddy was a brave little dog and used to help herd cattle with my dad, but he was shaking and barking very unconvincingly at the thing that was approaching. I stood there inside the doorway and just stared at the Bigfoot. Though I didn't connect Bigfoot with what I was seeing at the time, and I think I might have heard about Bigfoot only once or twice many years before. When I recounted this event to my husband, I told him that my brain was acting as a Rolodex of animals that I knew of, and nothing matched what I was seeing. I kept saying out loud, "What is that? What is that?" And my son kept answering, "I don't know." I know without a doubt that the Bigfoot was well aware of our presence, even before I was aware of his. He, or she, though I felt it more masculine, walked what seemed intentionally in our direction, though not looking at us. And I know he must have heard Buddy barking, but he acted as though he didn't. The Bigfoot seemed in no hurry at all, and even almost like he was just out for a stroll. He continued toward the trailer until he reached a wood fence that served no fencing purpose but was more for decoration, I suppose. He stayed on the opposite side of the fence for me, but being that the fence was the long horizontal pole kind, I could see him still just as easily. Again, Buddy is still barking, though not near as often, and yet the Bigfoot paid him absolutely no mind and didn't even look in Buddy's direction, which was also my direction. The Bigfoot wandered slowly beside the gate while looking down at the ground as if he was looking for something in specific. He was slightly hunched over, but still tall, although I wouldn't guess as tall as other Bigfoot that I have heard about. I would have to go back to the fence and see for myself, because I was up higher than it, and that may have caused it to appear shorter to me. However, at least 3 feet of it was above the fence. I would say between 5.5 and 6 feet tall. Also, I would guess that the deck was about 30 feet away from the fence, and I might have been about 6 feet further back, being that I was inside the trailer. Still, I consider that very close, and feel blessed that our encounter lasted for at least 3 minutes, maybe longer. The most distinguishing characteristic of the Bigfoot was the brilliant white long hair that it had. It seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. I have to say that it was beautiful and very clean. The details of the Bigfoot are fuzzy for me, as my mind was just constantly reeling as to what in the world I was seeing. I do remember being able to visibly see a face at this point because his head was sideways. I was seeing his profile this whole time. Also, something about it gave me the impression that it was older. Maybe it was the white hair, or maybe the slow way it was walking, maybe the hunch. I just felt it to be my elder. As he continued to walk alongside the fence, I realized that he would soon be out of my sight on the other side of the detached garage if he continued walking in that direction. I wanted to keep watching it so badly, didn't want to lose sight of it, and also wanted to see it without the glass interfering, so I opened the screen door, which swung out to the right, which was the direction he was walking, very slightly. In fact, just enough to squeeze my head through, and had to turn my head to the right and sort of on the outside of the door in order to see him again. He was still beside the fence. The next thing that happened still brings tears to my eyes and covers me in goosebumps. I know he must have heard the screen door squeak open, because as I was turning my head to look at him, he was turning his head to look at me. This was the first time that he had acknowledged that we were even there, and he was looking me directly in the eyes nonetheless. It was an amazing moment, and I will never forget the feeling of peace and calm that washed over me while I stared back into his eyes. His eyes were big and round and black, but they had emotion within them. I saw a sort of sadness in his eyes, and also a sort of kindness. I knew while we were staring at each other that he would not hurt me and was not aggressive, but rather seemed very calm and peaceful. To this day, I wish I could go back to that day, that very moment, and step out onto that deck. I wish I would have offered him a friendly hello. Instead, he seemed to wait to see what I was going to do, and when he realized I wasn't moving, he turned his head back to the ground and continued walking in that same direction. In a few steps, he was on the other side of the garage and out of my sight. So I ran as fast as I could toward that end of the trailer and into my mother's bedroom, where she was still sleeping, and nearly tore the curtains off the window trying to find him again. My mother was not happy with being woke up in this manner and asked what was going on, and I didn't even know what to say. I didn't really know what was going on either. My son was also looking out the window trying to catch a glimpse of the Bigfoot, but we didn't see him. I was hyped and rattling things off to my mother about what I had just seen, and she asked me, "What was it?" And I said I didn't know. She asked if it was a bear, and I said no. It was definitely not a bear, and it was walking on two legs like we do. She asked if it was a dog, and I told her no. It didn't look at all like a dog, and it was way too big to be a dog. I couldn't answer her questions because they were my questions too. I can't remember much that happened directly following our conversation, such as if we stayed inside or went out on the deck, or what we did to pass the time until my dad got home. I was very anxious to relay to him what I had seen and hopefully get some answers from him, as he worked outside on this land for a living as a farmhand, and I figured he had to have seen it too. I still find it strange that my dad didn't seem shocked when I described what I had seen, yet he claimed to have never seen anything like it. He kind of acted like he didn't believe me, but he's a really laid-back type of guy and not much gets him excited, so that might have been the case. I'm really not sure, and he won't participate in conversations that my mother and I have about that day and the Bigfoot I saw when we talk about it in front of him. Speaking of those conversations between my mother and I, she recalls that I was terrified to go outside on the deck alone anymore. I don't remember that, but I don't remember any more of that visit at all. I'm thankful that Buddy was there to confirm what I was seeing, as well as my son. Although he doesn't remember this encounter now, he does remember an encounter that I don't remember, but that's another story. So that concludes our third encounter of the night. And like I shared, that's one of my favorite encounters that I've even come across. And the way she describes this Bigfoot's emotion, she could see it in its eyes. I saw a sort of sadness and kindness in his eyes. And then I found it, I could almost feel her regret as she wished she could go back to that day and just step out onto that deck and say hello. It's almost like the creature was waiting for her to do that. So what do you guys think about this encounter? This encounter's a lot different than some of the other encounters of aggressiveness and fear. This is the exact opposite. With this encounter, there's also a description that this lady had written down. And I'm going to read that description to you. The Sasquatch was a brilliant white, long, straight, and clean hair covering from its head down to its legs. Large black eyes. Walks on two legs, long arms. Somewhat hunched as it walked aimlessly. Fully aware of our presence, but unconcerned. Maybe 6 feet tall, could have been taller or a few inches shorter. Seemed to be elderly. No hair around its eyes except for maybe a few long hairs from the top of its head that hung down. Very quiet. It made no noise at all when it walked. Was unperturbed by the dog barking. Did not look at us directly until I opened the door and peered out at him. He then met my gaze with his eyes, and they held great emotion, such as what appeared to be sadness, curiosity, peace, and a gentleness, as well as wisdom. He was not aggressive at all, not in body language or facial expression or anything else. Appeared to be searching for something on the ground. So that's the description that was given, and it's an amazing encounter as a whole. So what do you guys think of that encounter? One of my favorites, I would have to say. So leave me some comments, what you think about what she saw when she looked in this creature's eyes. Have you heard other encounters where there's almost this emotional connection to this creature? It's just fascinating. It's fascinating. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of this, and I hope you enjoyed these 3 encounters of these white-haired Bigfoot. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, a friend emailed some encounters from the state of Pennsylvania, which we didn't even discuss tonight. They also entail these same white-haired Bigfoot. I want to thank my friend for sending that, and I'll leave a link to his channel in the description of this video. His channel name is Nose Pickin', KNOWSPICKEN, Nose Pickin'. He's a good friend, and he's got a good channel. And he's also a moderator for this channel, so appreciate what you do, my friend. And I appreciate each and every one of you for hanging out with us a bit here tonight. Hopefully those were something enjoyable for you. And let me know in the comments what you think. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Hope you have a great night, and we will see you on the next.